Hello and welcome to the special edition of BizChina's year-end program. In the next 2 days, we'll look back at China's economic performance during 2008 and also look ahead at what is in store for 2009. 2008 was by all means an extraordinary year. The country celebrated 30 years of reform and opening up, staged a spectacular Olympics, but also saw one of the most devastating earthquakes. It was also the year of the worst global financial crisis in half a century. Although China's economic engine slowed down during the second half of 2008, its economy still managed to forge ahead thanks to a number of government policies. Joining us now in the studio is Professor Huo Zheming from Peking University. Professor Huo will share with us his insights into the Chinese economy. So, Professor Huo, if there is one word to describe Chinese economy in the year 2008, what would it be?
A tumultuous year, indeed.
A tumultuous year. Exactly, we have been through a tumultuous year. There's been ups and downs, there is reasons for growth, but also fears of downturn. Professor Huo will give us more analysis later on, and let's first take a look back over the past year.
For China, 2008 started with a winter storm that disrupted journeys as people returned home to their families, halting transportation and paralyzing the electricity network. But this was not the end of disasters. Just months later, the whole nation was shaken by a devastating earthquake in May in Sichuan province. The catastrophe killed nearly 70,000 people and led to direct economic losses of over 845 billion yuan. But the world witnessed China's strength through its relief efforts. But all this didn't affect China's ability to successfully host the Beijing Olympic Games. The event was not only a promotion for Beijing, but the whole country, and analysts believe the Games will have long-term advantages for China's economy. But it was the unfolding global financial crisis, the worst ever since the Great Depression in the late 1920s, that actually made China even more attractive. As the whole world is seeking ways out of the crisis, they have turned to emerging markets, especially China. Looking back, the past year was indeed a bittersweet memory for China. The country is certainly not losing confidence. No single year prior to 2008 has brought China so many ups and downs. No single year has given China so many tests and uncertainties.
Well, Mr. Huo, we have seen a lot of events this year, both in nature and in economy. How would you evaluate the economic impacts of all these events? And which one do you pick that has the most influence?
There's no doubt the events happening in September of this year, especially Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, and AIG, all asking for help in mid-September. That is the financial events that's marked the dramatic things in this whole year, because then we see the government is trying to respond to this exogenous, or what we call unexpected events, in a subsequent but in a kind of hasty way.
And do you think the worst is over yet?
In terms of financial crisis, I think yes. I don't expect more commercial banks or even investment banks to go under. But the economic crisis resulting from the financial crisis, that is really hard to say. Because sometimes we do see governments are making mistakes.
For example, what kind of mistakes?
For instance, the General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, the three auto manufacturers, they're all asking for help for the Congress. And somehow the first proposed bills did not pass in Congress.
And Professor, in your view, besides the external problems caused by the global economic crisis, what kind of problems within China's basic economic structure and growth mode that may have caused these problems?
All right.
Back home.
Back home, we should look at two things. At the beginning of this year, we are still worrying about inflation, and nobody expects the rest of the world will be cooling down so fast. So in the beginning of at least to the middle of the year, that the policy-wise is indeed trying to cool down the domestic economy. But on the other hand, the outside world is cooling very fast after July. And so, yes, there are problems with China. Whatever causes the overheating to the beginning of this year, it was still there. And that's a structural problem. We should address that problem in addition to the worldwide cool down. So that is the basic challenge facing the domestic economy or the Chinese government at this moment.
So do you think the timing of the global financial crisis is beneficiary or is harmful for China's economic growth?
In the short term, it must be harmful. I cannot say beneficiary, but an economy to grow in its growing process, it's just like any human being in its growing process, that you have to go through certain events which might be considered very harmful or very painful. But once you go through that, you accumulate experiences, then you can move on to become a more mature personality. Same for the economy. Same for the government.
So we have to learn the lessons and move on.
Definitely.
As Mr. Ho, you mentioned, at the beginning of the year, our focus was fighting inflation, keeping the economy from overheating. But all of a sudden, the CPI has dropped dramatically. What is the reasons behind such a abrupt downturn?
The external demand, the worldwide demand is shrinking. And so economic terms, the aggregate demand is dropping, is shrinking very, very fast. So China has been a country, a big country, relying on the rest of the world. Or in that sense, the aggregate demand for China drops very fast. And therefore, in the middle of the year, after the middle of the year, then we see the inflation rate, which was on average 8% or even 7%, and then down to a dismal like 2.5. And for the December, I believe the CPI will drop even further. And so basically for China, since it's interacting with the rest of the world so intensely, and that has to be a short-run factor.
And we have also seen that PPI growth, which is a producer price index, dipped faster than expected. Now it shrank to less than 3% last month.
We should look at the cause of the PPI drop simply because the demand was not there. And so for Chinese, although we can take advantage of lower energy or resource coppers prices, but then it depends on how we're going to use it effectively. I should emphasize effectively use. And that if we can make use of a good situation, that will be good things for us. When you see the price of energy is dropping, then we should realize that that's the time for us to re-engineer, restructure our industrial structure so that we can use the energy more efficiently.
So it's still, we should be aiming at a healthy development of economy.
Definitely.
Is the risk of inflation still going on, or we should fear deflation at the time?
In the short term, 3 to 6 months, we should be worrying about deflation. But I don't expect the deflation period to be long. Because simply that our economy is still a very outward intensive, namely we're still accumulating foreign exchange reserves. Even for the last 3 to 4 months, our export dropping, but import drops further. So that's why our reserves is still at a $2 trillion US dollars. And so in the long run, I don't see the inflation itself will ease out. And in the long run, I am really concerned about the potential threat of further inflation.
It is the GDP growth, which is 9.9% last month. Do you think this is a healthy figure? We should keep that rate at the current level?
As our history have told us, from 1997 to 2007, on average, the growth rate is about 9.5%. So I would say for the next 5 years, say 9% average. I think that's a proper goal to shoot.
What is at risk that can hamper China's economic growth next year? What is the potential factors that may affect China's economy from growing?
Well, obviously the external economy has been weakened, and that's something we cannot control. But our domestic side, we should try to shift our industrial structure or shift our demand from a total, a more outward-oriented economy to a more domestic, inward-looking economy. I think that's all we've been discussing in the last 6 months.